Did you start your day with a little bit of extra money in your bank account today? Because if you did, you're like thousands of other Americans out there who got their advanced child tax credit today, July 15th. This is the government giving you your tax credit you usually get at the end of the year now to try to avoid any more calamities happening here in the country. And what is the purpose of this whole situation where the government's giving us extra money early? It's to avoid civil unrest. It's to avoid what's happening in other countries around the world right now. And with the eviction moratoriums ending July 31st, we know that things could get very dire here. So in this video, we're going to talk about what's going on around the world, why we know these tax credits are exactly what they are, which is to prevent civil unrest and things from falling apart any further, and what we should do with this money in the sense of prepping. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're talking about this child tax credit that we're all getting advance payments for, at least if you have children. And this is happening all over the country. People are receiving money direct deposit in their bank accounts starting today. Even I received the money. And this is all to placate the population and avoid civil unrest and the people from losing their minds when things really start to fall apart here. And the timing is very interesting, as we know the CDC's eviction moratorium expires July 31st, so just in about 2 weeks. So what does that mean? It means that they're trying to figure out other ways to put money out there that doesn't exist, because we know how much debt we're in right now, in order to keep the people from falling apart and becoming rioters, looters, mobs. The list goes on. And things are falling apart around the world right now that shows us that this is exactly what the purpose of this money is. Because we all know that things are not looking good. All the economic indicators are there to tell us that things are falling apart. So if you're worried about preparing for what's coming, and we all know things are getting worse, especially when the government just keeps giving out money that doesn't exist, that should definitely give you some red flags. Then hit the subscribe button below, because we're going to do our best to keep preparing on this channel, and hopefully whatever we talk about here can help you be better prepared at your home, okay? So, child tax credits are being given out, and people are receiving money in their accounts once again due to the effects of last year. And here we are again, giving out more money that doesn't exist. Well, things are getting really dire out there. We know that with this eviction moratorium, with the cost of housing, with rent going through the roof, with food shortages on their way, and I guarantee you they are coming, things are gonna get very desperate if people don't have a way to keep moving forward and keep living their life and keep surviving, at least in the sense of being able to eat and put, food on the table for their families. But the government isn't supposed to be in charge of that. At this point, they currently are for many Americans. And the whole situation that's going on here is it's a placation. We're trying to keep people from losing their minds. We're trying to keep people from hitting the streets. We're trying to keep people from burning and looting and rioting. A lot of the activity that we saw over the last year was a product of what was going on throughout the country, as well as certain other political aspects as to what the country was dealing with. But at the same time, now we're at a point where the economy is really starting to show us the effects of what happened last year. And with labor shortages happening all over the country, and with people refusing to go back to work for many reasons, in the sense of wanting to get paid more for doing the job they did before, or because they're receiving the money from the government, they no longer feel the need to go to work, this whole activity of giving out more and more of that money is only going to perpetuate the problem that's occurring. And what's going to happen is that every single thing that we do, or that we enjoy, or that we have to buy is going to be more and more expensive. When people can't afford the labor force, they pass the buck on to you. When the labor force doesn't want to work, the expenses of trying to recruit a labor force and pay it correctly is going to cost you more money. And then that applies to every single industry throughout the entire country, but especially when it comes to things like food, okay? There's a lot of different moving parts in the sense of logistics when it comes to putting food on our tables. And when food starts to fall apart, and when people can't get the necessities of life, society begins to collapse and things go awry very quickly. And this money is a really small band-aid to try to keep us from falling into that chasm of unrest, which is exactly what we're seeing in places like Cuba right now, due to the exact same scenarios. A crumbling economy, a lack of resources, and the people are not being taken care of. Well, what's happening in South Africa right now could be another example as to what our government is trying to avoid. Because yes, there's some political tension over there that has created this firestorm of looting and riots and everything else that's going on in their country, but a lot of it's a product of people being desperate and feeling like they can't have any control over their life and using opportunities like this to then move into the next phase of societal breakdown. And that's what we're seeing in South Africa, we're seeing it in Cuba, of course we're seeing things like that in Haiti, and now it's just another thing that we know our government's trying to avoid. I don't necessarily think, and I don't believe that many of you do either, that the government has our best interests in mind when it comes to making decisions. Most of what they're trying to figure out is how to maintain some kind of aspect of the economy, maintain the ability to keep that GDP growing, and at the same time keep the people peaceful, because without a peaceful population, things cannot operate smoothly. And this country is obviously operated like a business. It basically is a corporation in many ways. And with people out there burning and looting and losing their minds, the business no longer operates. And this is what they're trying to avoid. It's not about trying to help you or I. It's not about putting money in our pockets thinking that it's going to be the fix-all. All it is doing is placating the population, especially at the lowest income levels, to say, please don't go outside and start burning things. Please do not rob everybody you run into. Please don't break into shopping malls and steal everything in sight. Here's some more money. Yeah, you might be evicted in the next 2 weeks, but at least you have a little more money now, so if you need to get a new place, hopefully this helps you. And you can see how these dates and these deadlines are being put into place to make sure that there's some other stopgap from society from falling apart right away. And that's exactly where we are. That should concern you and make you want to prepare more, because things are obviously falling apart in other parts of the world. And if we don't take examples from what's going on, then we're just going to be in a bad spot as well here very soon. And I don't see things just magically improving. We're going to have the food shortages here soon, and it's going to cost more and more money to stock up on food supplies. So, what do we do with this new stimulus money? Which is basically what it is. Yes, it's money you would have received at the end of the tax year anyway. But now you're going to get it now, and you're not going to necessarily get as much as you were used to before at the end of the year. But now that you have it, what should you do with it? Well, I'll just tell you what I'm going to do with it, because I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not going to tell you what to do with your money. But when it comes to prepping, my thought process is looking at a couple different things right now. And one of the main things that I'm looking at is food, because it's going to be more expensive 6 months from now. And you're going to wish you bought more of it now while you could get more for your dollar than what you're going to find here in 6 months, because the food shortages are due to a lot of different factors. But there was a huge lack of agricultural production back in 2020 that is finally starting to catch up with us. And then you add in the supply chain breakdowns, and you add in the labor force shortages, and you add in every other aspect as to what's affecting this whole situation, and it's going to raise prices. Inflation is hitting new highs right now, and we know that food companies have even come out and said that food is going to cost more by the end of the year. So I'm going to take some of this money and get more and more food supplies. And I suggest you do the same thing when it comes to being better prepared. Now, what else should you be prepping if you already have a lot of food? Or if maybe you feel like you want to split some of the money up, put some money into food? Great. What else should come next? Well, look at what's happening around the world and understand that the next shoe to drop in this whole situation is going to be unrest. Because once people can't get enough food and they don't have the money flowing anymore that we don't have to give to everybody, they're going to start getting out on the streets, and they're going to start making themselves heard once again. So I would probably also look at other things like emergency preps, in the sense of being able to avoid or get away from those unrest scenarios. And just make sure that you have different supplies that can help you survive a situation where a mob starts coming down the street you live on in order to loot and riot and everything else that they might want to do during an unrest scenario. So what does that mean? I mean, honestly, this is like going back to basic preparedness items, but I'm talking about like fire extinguishers, alarm systems, video surveillance equipment, and I would even look at basic things like, escape ladders. If you live on the 2nd floor, the 3rd floor, the 8th floor, whatever floor you live on, have ways to escape if need be, because fire is one of the main tools used in these unrest situations. And if you look at what's happening in South Africa right now, there's a lot of burning going on. If you look at what was happening in the United States last year during the summer, there was a lot of burning going on. And understand that burning is exactly how a lot of these riots end, okay? So These are things you should consider. And I think home security and ways to escape and food are great things to be prepping right now. But food is huge because it will cost more and more every single day we get closer to the end of the year. And so what you buy now will be more than what you can buy 6 months from now. And you'll be glad that you stashed it away, because who knows what's going to happen economically even. It might not be unrest that causes the problem for you. You might not have an income. You might not be able to afford food once those prices go through the roof. And you'll be glad that you have the food you bought now set aside. So I'm going to get more and more food. That's what I'm going to do. And yes, I already am working on security for my home and surveillance and everything else like that. So I suggest you looking into that as well, because with these situations, things can only get worse. And we need to be sure to be as prepared as possible for what could come next, okay? And I will go ahead and throw a food section on my Amazon storefront. I'll put links in the description and the pinned comment so you guys can check that out if that's something you want to, try to stock up on. And then obviously, I think that the cheapest route is a lot of times the best way to go. So getting your rice and your beans, but I'll throw out some ways for you guys to store that stuff, and I'll also give you some other food options like freeze-dried food and stuff like that, just so there's some things there for you to check out. And I do want to mention that coming up this Saturday, in just a couple days, I will have an awesome video out about bug out vehicles, okay? So I know you guys have been wondering, what the heck is Magic Prepper's bug out vehicle, and what does he do in the sense of having a vehicle that's ready to rock in a SHTF situation? You're gonna find out on Saturday, and it's gonna be awesome. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that, because during this unrest and during looting and rioting and everything else that's going on with that kind of stuff, sometimes escaping and leaving and evading the situation is your best option. So having a vehicle that's ready to roll and having the supplies you need to keep that vehicle up and running during an SHTF scenario is extremely important. Make sure you check that video out, like I said, in 2 days, this Saturday. But I wanted to bring this to your attention because child tax credit, the advanced payment that we all received today, or at least a lot of parents did, it's just extra money that the government's giving you to try to make sure you don't go burning things. And that's exactly what the purpose of this all is. And why is that? It's because unrest is the next thing on the table once people lose even more money than they already have, lose their homes, which is definitely coming up here again, and can't afford the food that they need to survive. And that's where we're heading. And if you want to look at those other countries like South Africa and Cuba, there's your examples right now of what things could look like here very soon. So, wanted to bring this to your attention. Hopefully this video was helpful, and that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.